Big new adventure. That's what we're going to do. We're still going to do the motorcycle stuff, but we're going to be traveling in our RV. It's a larger one. There's lots of videos on here of people parking smaller ones in parking lots and up goat trails. But you can't do that with a big RV. So follow our channel, enjoy the motorcycling and the RV traveling.
Well, here we are at Team Ramco, picking up the truck, and there's the truck, all ready to go. I've got a big parts list I think I might scan and put on here so you can see what the heck they did do. If we can tell us in person what they have done. Go find the guy who's going to tell me that. The guy in there's doing the welding on the plates, I think. That they will tell you about. So, let's see what happens.
This one's about twice the thickness.
This is stock.
Yeah.
This is half again is
actually SFI rated one for racing applications for more horsepower. So what happens on these usually will end up cracking around the center here.
Is that what happened with mine, or do you know?
No, it's not cracked. But anytime we do a triple lot, because if we do a triple lot, usually because somebody's going to be doing more horsepower.
What's a triple lot?
The converter.
The converter. Okay.
So that's why we always do this.
Let's see. Well, that's quite a bit heavier. Quite a bit heavier.
And thicker. The reason why that's done that way, tell me why, huh?
I think you just did. Did you?
Yeah. So these tend to break here. I had one, the guy came in, and he wanted to do the triple lock, but he had something happen right before he came in, and this whole center busted out, destroyed his whole motor blade. So he had a lot more going on after that.
Yeah.
But going back together, he had that, and a new motor blade.
All right. Thank you. What next, Flash?
Okay, Dave.
Yeah.
This is kind of pull the parts out.
We put a manual valve in. That's a stock one. This is the aftermarket one we put in, and the reason is because the Chrysler doesn't lube when it's sitting there in park. See the...
Oh, this is the new one with the hole.
This is the new one. It's got a spring and a check valve in there, and it allows fluid to go in there and come out here to lube the transmission while it's sitting there idling in park. Because Chrysler doesn't lube whatsoever when it's in park. Only when it's in neutral.
That's a solid piece, isn't it?
Right.
Gee.
They orifice the hole, you know, so it'll give you lube oil and keep everything alive after the fact, you know, because if you starve the oil off, and a lot of guys will sit there and leave that Dodge running in, you know, parked in the parking lot for who knows. They think it's a big truck and they let it run for a couple hours at a time. Well, if it's not getting any lube, you're not doing anything but tearing up your transmission.
Wow, that's something to know.
This is a force pull valve. This controls your lockup. And Chrysler designed theirs. The valve was solid all the way out to the second land here, the little one. And what it would do is it would choke off the flow, so that when it went to engage the clutch in the converter, it couldn't apply it completely because it wasn't getting enough flow through there. So this is a modified one from the same people. And then the only one I don't have to show you is the manual valve itself, and it's cut like that so that it actually gets more oil going through it in park and neutral in the passages. Now the other thing, yours had a issue with coming out of park.
Yes, it did.
Yeah. What happens is there's a spring and a ball that go in here for the rooster, what they call the rooster. You know, and what you imagine is the ball is in there.
Yeah.
The ball would actually move with the rooster
So
it would
jam.
it would wear it out, and they have a repair kit, so we do that on the 48s at the same time because they're all prone to do it.
Yeah, it would definitely do it.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't even get it to move once it was on the bench. I stuck a big old screwdriver in there. I think I'm going to change that thing. Anyway, we do that. We flat sand the valve body and the separator plate and the lower valve body. And when we do that, it takes the warpage out of them. And you'd be surprised how warped these things actually are. I mean, when we first start, it may be touching here, here, and here on this corner. All this in here doesn't touch. And what we use is a 1-inch marble slate.
Oh, I see it.
And with sandpaper, and we flat sand all the surfaces so that they made up, because Chrysler doesn't use gaskets. So they get cross links through the valve body, and you get a clutch pack that's trying to apply when it shouldn't be, and it ends up burning up the unit. Now the other thing of yours, I was talking about the lube oil.
Yes.
Let me find your parts here, what I did with them. Yeah. I'd be looking for a while down there. This is most of the stuff out of yours that got changed. This right here is where the lube oil, the return from the cooler comes in. And if you run your finger right there, that's what I'm talking about as far as, well, you can see the step in it.
Yeah.
And that's wore out. And the lube oil comes in through the passage here and then goes through the shafts. And that's the return oil from the cooler. Well, if it...
That ain't supposed to be that step.
Right. Supposed to be nice and smooth like this side.
Oh, I see, yeah.
I mean, you can still see the mark,
the
but...
oil is coming in, so it has a little less friction.
Well, what it is, it allows that shaft to move around and it wears all kinds of things out then. But this is all the, like I said, this is the clutches and steels and everything out of yours. And then we replaced the main thrust bearings back in the overdrive section. And the thrust washers themselves. The more weight you pull with a trailer, this used to be that tall all the way around.
Used to be how tall?
As tall as the little buttons.
Oh, the big tabs here.
Right, and the pressure or the torque of the motor and transmission pushed the weight of the vehicle and everything against these washers and actually compress it.
And we don't.
And you're talking about, no, those are all replaced. You're talking 10, 15, maybe 20 thousandths worth of wear that occurs. And all that's real critical in that area because that's your forward planet setup.
That would be the reason why, one of the reasons my first and second gear was doing its thing. Wasn't doing its thing?
Yours was slipping pretty bad, if I remember right. Yeah, that's the band right there. That's second gear. It's charcoal black.
It ain't supposed to be.
No.
What's this electronic stuff right here?
That's your governor pressure, governor sensor, and then your 3/4 solenoid and the overdrive solenoid. Those all get changed. Chrysler had issues with their transducer, their pressure sensor. They would go out all the time. And so yours, we upgraded to the General Motors style that's converted for a heavier duty application. So it doesn't give you the same issues that OEM stuff has. Well, basically that's it. I mean, we changed 3 of the valves. We flat sand everything, go back through it, freshen everything up, and I think you'll be happy with the truck.
Yeah.
I think you'll be real happy with it. Drive it, you'll see a big difference in it.
I don't know if you want me to show your face or not on there, Dave, but thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm not camera shy, but I usually don't like pictures.
Yeah, well, I didn't get them. I've just been getting your pretty little hands there.
Yeah,
All right, well, thank you, Dave, for showing me that part.
you're welcome.
We're going to talk about the difference between the stock torque converter and what you guys build.
Okay, so let me get everything set up and we'll go from right there, okay?
All right.
Alrighty, I'm going to show you what a stock 47, 48 RE converter looks like, what the defects are, and what we do at Team Ramco to modify them, make them better, and be more efficiently, and be able to hold up to higher horsepower and higher torque. The first thing we're going to start with is the actual factory cover, which is stamped steel that they weld these 1-inch blocks onto. Now when you weld two pieces of metal, it distorts the metal. However, over time, with the metal going hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, from normal operation, it can fatigue the metal over time. When you add strain to the two components that have been welded, they end up causing these to bend and flex. The more power you add, the more torque you add, and the more weight you add, the more strain it puts on these 6 elements. What happens is it will bend it bad enough where it can create raised sections inside the converter, or what can happen over time, if the clutch starts to wear down, it can go metal to metal and destroy itself. So to keep this from being a long-standing issue, we had to find something that would go and hold up better against what our customers do with their vehicles. So instead of the stamped steel, we replaced it with a billet cover in its place. So instead of stamped steel with welded lugs, this has been CNC'd out of a block of billet steel, and now this is a solid ring. Now with guys that are doing increases in horsepower, we had to find something that would hold up and have more clamping power and lockup. So instead of a single disc clutch, which comes factory, which is made out of stamped steel as well, with what they call the industry paper lining. Over time, if the cover's bending and flexing, or ballooning as people call it, it can end up taking the lining down to the point where it destroys itself. So instead of it bending and flexing here, we replace it with 3 clutches instead. So we have one single-sided lining here on a hardened steel plate that's been heat treated, and we have a double-sided one on a hardened steel plate as well. Now the factory piston is only designed for 500 foot-pounds maximum of torque. This one, with an update of a billet steel dampener in it and a different spring assembly, this one is designed to hold up to 1,400 foot-pounds of torque and also up to 1,000 horsepower without it bending, flexing, or destroying itself.
Where's the stock one like that?
This is the stock one right here.
This is it?
Yes. This has been redesigned and re-engineered from the OE. The dampening is on the backside here.
Oh, I see. And it's got
It's got tinier springs that are maybe
yeah.
an inch and a half.
I didn't even recognize this one with that one.
Correct. That's how much engineering has been done on this.
That's quality.
Yeah.
That's just quantity.
Yes.
And to pump up the horsepower, you gotta make that much in order for it to hold. Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. I said,
Now, also inside the converter, you have a turbine, a stator, and what's called an impeller. And the impeller is what goes into the pump of the transmission. And all the pump is turned by the hub itself that goes into the pump of the transmission, which is, and the hub itself is attached to the impeller of the torque converter. On the turbine, you have different types of alloys that are put on the turbine hub itself. This one, it happens to be heat treated. A factory one would not be. And what happens is these splines, because they're made of a softer alloy.
Talking about this piece right
Correct.
here.
This right here is the turbine hub. What happens with these is the softer alloys don't hold up against higher horsepower and higher torque demand. So what happens is it actually strips the splines out of here, or it ends up taking it to pieces where it ends up destroying itself from all the ballooning that's done in here, which is also incorporated on the cover. So instead of this taking a chance of breaking and wearing down under higher demand, we replace them with a hardened and heat treated chromoly turbine hub in its place.
Oh, it's got a lot more
Correct.
also.
Well, there's also more surface area down here.
Yeah.
Okay. The factory ones on the turbines, the factory ones are not, most of them are not furnace brazed or brazed in any shape or form. And what happens with these, from the increase of the power and weight, these vanes can come loose and break out. And if they break out, they could end up doing something like this, where it's split itself, it's broken the center out of it, or on the impeller side of it, it can break these loose and tear them up out of the housing.
Take it all the way out of it.
Taking it all the way out of it. So to keep that from happening, a lot of different shops do different processes to keep these vanes in place. Some TIG weld, some MIG weld, some furnace braze. We use MIG brazing on ours, and we go in and we lock all the vanes in all the way through to make sure that they do not twist out, break out, or lift out. And then we actually go in, and this will all be cleaned up. This is still before final cleanup. And we go in and we clean up all the welds in here, clean all the spatter out, make sure that there's no way of anything getting in and destroying anything else. But we do this because we want to increase the integrity of it. We want it to be able to hold up against higher horsepower applications without failing, and to make it more durable. Now the next part is the stator itself. The stator inside has a one-way clutch. So when you get on the gas, this is designed to go one direction and lock when you're on the gas. When you're off the gas, this turns freely the opposite direction. Well, what happens inside these, the rollers and springs in here and the retainer that's inside end up breaking apart under higher horsepower demand, and it ends up destroying itself. Plus, the plastic cap that is put on here from the factory is riding up against the steel component. Even though it's encased in fluid, it creates friction, and extra friction creates heat, and the higher the heat is inside the unit, the sooner it is to fail. So what we do in ours, we actually take the plastics and we get rid of them. We also reinforce the inside of the stator.
So this plastic there, that's gone.
Yeah, this plastic gets completely removed because these are notorious for breaking.
Yeah, I can see why.
Okay, and instead we replace them with an aluminum adapter and a Torrington bearing in place of plastic to eliminate the friction. But also, the inner workings of the stator, where the one-way clutch goes, instead of it ending up broken like this one here, we actually put a one-piece hardened outer stator race inside, and we actually weld lugs on to keep it from twisting out of the aluminum. And we've had these go up against 900 horse already and more, and not have them fail or break. So again, we step each level of this converter up for higher load demand, better pulling power, and even fuel economy increase in them, which we'll get into next. And the reason we do it is, again, we want something better for not only ourselves that are consumers, but also for our customers, for our consumers as well. They want to have something better in their vehicle to go further. Now inside every converter, between all the various vanes in here, in the turbine, in the impeller, and in the stator, they all control the stall inside the converter for the vehicle. Now stall is the point of idle to where the vehicle starts making its power and efficiency at. And in the converters, we actually, in our diesel ones, we lower the stall down to get better fuel economy. And what we do with it is we actually get it to match the range of the turbo spool on the diesels. So if your turbo starts pulling at 1400, 1500, 1600, 1700, we would match the stall down to that range to give you more pulling power on the spool through the shift point. And by doing so, we're able to increase bottom end power, bottom end torque, fuel economy, but also the converter would run cooler because it's not having to wind up at a higher RPM to do the same job with the motor. So by doing so overall, you keep the engine temp running cooler, the trans temp will run cooler, you will pick up fuel economy, and you'll have added torque and power that you didn't have before at the bottom end.
You had a little thing here you showed me.
Oh, the retainer.
That retainer, I mean,
Let's see if I can pull that down more. There it is. Here's what a stock retainer looks like without any damage.
that's this part down in here.
That's what sits down in here. Okay, well there's a wire part of it that holds the rolls and springs in place. It's made out of tin, and when these break under higher power, it ends up breaking this component and even the outer race itself. This will break into pieces, yes. So this would sit in here, this would sit in here, and we've had it where customers have either broke this loose, where this acts like it's in neutral, or it's very sluggish because it has no way of directing the fluid, or it breaks it and locks it where it tries to chug the motor because the stator is directing all the fluids to move and keep the converter staying on in a sense, where it's keeping the fluid moving, so it's making the converter come on even at idle. So a lot of times when we have customers come in and complain of either the converter's trying to chug, the truck's trying to chug along, or they're having to rev the motor to 2,500, almost 3,000 RPMs to get it to move, we know right away that it's caused by this component being broke, or it is broken the springs out of it. So instead of this happening, again under modified trucks, we instead have to beef it up to make it live longer, because we want the modded trucks to still have performance, reliability, and have some extra performance. Any other questions?
No, I kind of covered it.
All right.
And it's pretty.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for showing me all this stuff.
Oh, not a problem.
And then what bolts right here? There's something, weld something in here, don't you?
Yes, when the converter's all been assembled with all the new parts,
Yeah.
and it's put all together, we then weld the converter together. So we weld the bottom to the impeller, and they all get set to a specific tolerance on them.
Yeah. And you balance them quite
And we balance them. After we weld them, we pressure check them to make sure there's no leaks anywhere around the weld. After we're satisfied with that portion of it, it gets computerized balance down to 0 grams of balance.
Okay.
So,
All right. And that's all in my truck now.
Yep, and that is all in your truck. In fact, this setup right here is what we put in your truck.
Good. Can't wait to drive it. Well, thank you very much.
Enjoy it. You're welcome.
And I'm going to go drive the truck.
Alrighty.
Good people. Well, I'm going to apologize right now because that background noise, we're in a shop. These guys can't quit working for me to film for you guys. So I hope you made all that out. Like I said, I'm going to scan and try to put a picture on here that you can pause and see all the parts they put into my truck. Very friendly people. I mean, most people ain't going to take the time to stop production just to do a film. So I'll get her edited up and I'm going to put the parts list on right here.